Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Computer Science. Today, our guest is Mr. Lee Hark. Throughout his distinguished career, Mr. Lee Hark has brought a love of learning, a commitment to mission and vision for innovation to every school he has served. Currently, Mr. Hark is the head of the Greenhill School in Addison, Texas. Mr. Hark came to Greenhill from Durham Academy in Durham, North Carolina, where he served as Associate Head of School starting in 2014 and Upper School Director starting in 2008. He attended the highly regarded Darlington School in Rome, Georgia, and received his BA in English with honors from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 1992. In 1997, Mr. Hark earned an MED in Education Leadership from the University of Georgia and did doctoral work in social foundations of education at the University of Virginia. Mr. Hark began his career as a teacher at Darlington School in 1993, and over the years he served in a variety of leadership positions, including admissions and student activities, Dean of Students, Coordinator of Faculty Recruitment, Upper School Director, and Associate Head of School. In addition to Durham Academy, he has worked in independent schools including Choata Rosemary Hall in Wallingford, Connecticut, and Providence Day School in Charlotte, North Carolina. Lee, welcome to our show. Let's talk computer science. So, can you tell me your story? What compelled you to become the head of Greenhill?
Sure, yeah. And then, that introduction gives a pretty good view of the path to Greenhill. But I started in independent schools in 1993. Went back actually after college to work at my alma mater, Darlington, which is a prep school, boarding and day school in Rome, Georgia, which is northwest of Atlanta. Worked there for several years. I actually intended to go to law school. I had thought about law school coming out of college, but thought I would teach for a couple of years first, and that was 30 years ago, basically. I never went back, and have worked in independent schools ever since then. A brief stint at Choate in Connecticut, and figured out it was too cold up there, and so came running back to the Mid-Atlantic. Worked in schools there, took a brief pause to work on a doctorate that I didn't finish, but at University of Virginia, and then a few more schools, and then this job came open at Greenhill, and Greenhill is such a tremendous school. Its values really matched well with mine. Its commitment to diversity and inclusion, its commitment to academic excellence. I'd known some folks who had worked at Greenhill. There's a lot of crossover from my former school in Durham, North Carolina, and Greenhill, and had just kept hearing wonderful things about it. And so when the job came open, I came after it hard, and fortunately it worked out. And it was my first headship, and felt like, and still feel like, I hit an absolute home run. It's an amazing school, and my wife Marianne and I are so happy to be here. Our kids are thriving in Greenhill, and professionally, it's just been amazing. So we feel very happy and fortunate to be at a school like this.
Yep, that's great. And I read one of your articles when you said right after pandemic started. That's so beautiful. You can be a writer as well.
Thank you very much. I work hard on my writing too. And I've got a lot of help here at Greenhill. People help me put those out. So it's not just me.
So can you please tell us more about your school?
Sure. So Greenhill is a pre-K through 12 coeducational school. It's really the only one of its structure and size in Dallas, or in the Metroplex. We have about 1,340 students, so it's a fairly large school by independent school standards. And all grades pre-K through 12 are on one campus. And we're an independent school, a private school. And so, admissions is a big part of what we do in terms of creating our community. Very academically strong. Our kids go to amazing colleges and do amazing things in life. And again, as I said in my intro, a school that's really deeply committed to diversity and inclusion, and making sure that we have a community where lots of different kinds of people feel like they can belong and be fully enfranchised members of the school and the community. And so I think it's, in many ways, it's unique. It's not non-religious. and it's coeducational. And those are two things that distinguish us from some of our peer schools here in town.
Yep, and the peacocks.
And the peacock. We do have peacocks. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Those two things in the peacocks are definitely unique, and I chose school for those three reasons. So I'm going to switch gears and switch to computer science now. How early should our country be focused on teaching technology education, and why do you feel that way?
That's a great question. And it really depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about strict computer science teaching in terms of courses and things like that, you really can never begin too early. We think that our youngest students, even say age 3, can begin learning the thinking structures necessary for programming. So teaching children sequencing, how to break a problem into smaller parts, how to efficiently solve that problem in as few steps as possible. We think that's invaluable and a life skill, and you really can't start that too early. Also teaching children how to understand data, how to track and decode and communicate their findings. Those are fundamental parts of our computer science education at school. And just teaching basic logic skills. Computer science is amazing for that as well, teaching them how to solve problems. So we start early. If you're talking about digital citizenship, I'd say those lessons probably start even before school. So at the youngest ages, and I think a lot of that rests on the shoulders of our parents. They have to be the ones to start this by modeling positive behaviors at home centered on positive use of technology. And of course, we all can feel guilty, I think, at times about the ways that we use technology in front of our children and think, gosh, I, in retrospect, hope my children don't do that. Pulling out the phone at dinner time, things like that. So we feel like that's got to be paired with our formal education, that digital citizenship. And we also have a program, I'll talk later about this if you'd like, have a program of digital citizenship here as well. But we feel like that starts even earlier and is just as a critical component. I'm reluctant to speak for the entire country. I really, it's a lot just for me to speak for Greenhill and for our 800 plus families and 1,340 students. But that's the approach we've taken. We choose to start young in both those areas, and we feel like it works pretty well for us. And for us too, it's not just an educational sort of brain development aim, but it's also a wellness aim for us as well. Because as you, I'm sure know, technology can get out of hand very quickly, and so we try to get a handle on that as early as we can.
Right. Yeah, definitely. That is very forward thinking, and I agree. Like, you cannot talk for the entire country. Every
Sure.
in a different situation. Yeah.
I can, but it's dangerous to do it.
Yeah. Can you tell us about the technology education programs taught at your school, including the
sure. For sure. And I'll start just with the hardware that we use. So we have a 1-to-1 iPad program in grades pre-K through 3. Those are our iPads that are left at school. We do allow them, we have allowed our students to take those home at times when we're fully remote during the pandemic, but that's not normal for us to do. And that's a program, we went 1-to-1 with iPads in those grades at the beginning of the pandemic, so that we could guarantee that all of our students had access to a high quality device. And for us, frankly, that's an equity issue as much as a technological issue. We felt it was important for all of our families to have that, so we made that investment. We have laptops in grade 4, but those stay at school. And then we have a take-home 1-to-1 device program in grades 5 through 12 that we've rolled out. We started rolling out last year, and that's a Microsoft Service device, so it's a common device across the school. And we're rolling that out 2 grades at a time. So in the next few years, all grades 5 through 12 will be using a common device. In terms of the formal education, students in our preschool and first grade, they're introduced to computer science and engineering concepts as through the sort of integrated classroom instruction. Our formal program starts in grade 2 and goes through grade 4. And that's where in the lower school where students attend computer science and engineering classes on a rotational basis. So what you would view as a kind of the standard sort, not standard, but a formal sort of structured class-based educational platform in computer science. That starts in second grade for us. And we also begin with an introduction to digital citizenship at that same time. So also word processing, computer navigation, programming concepts. And then they start learning to code, actually, at a really young age through programs like Scratch, through MIT, and eventually move into programming their own games and robotics and other computational thinking challenges, too. So it's actually pretty advanced. It's more than I can do. And I'm about 50 years old. Our young kids are doing some pretty amazing things. And our program at that age blends computer science and engineering. And again, for us, it's as much about learning the specific skills as it is a way of teaching kids a new way of thinking. And so it's a brain development thing. It's a pedagogical thing as much as it is, let's introduce these kids to coding. So maybe one day we're creating future coders. And in middle school, all fifth grade students take a coding course that teaches them the basic coding skills. Then that's through the Minecraft platform. And we do some exploratory stuff and exploratory design in sixth grade, and seventh and eighth grade in digital media. We look at using programs like Tinkercad, where students are giving design challenges and they research a design for that challenge. We also have Lego robotics in middle school, where students prepare for competition that centers around the development of a robot. And then a wide variety, as you would expect, of computer science, engineering, robotic classes in the upper school that include game design and app design. We have AP computer science, we have machine learning, data science. So lots of pretty advanced stuff in the upper school for when the kids get to that age.
So do you have any specific recommendations to enhance computer science education at Greenhill or in general?
I do. It's such a complicated thing, and parents fret about it. We work closely with our parents to make sure that the technology that we're using and the way that we're teaching it meshes well with what our families are hoping for at home. And of course, family by family, that differs widely. Greenhill is a very diverse school, and it's diverse in terms of its family approach to technology too. But I have two things that I would want to focus on here. One is, don't add technology tools unless they truly enhance the learning experience. And I think a lot of times schools try to chase technological trends, the flashiest new device. And oftentimes those things wind up gathering dust. We spend a ton of money and I think oftentimes waste it. And so Greenhill, we try not to do that. We try to be fairly prudent. We try to move relatively slowly when it comes to adopting new technology. And I think that's served us pretty well. So we try not to just jam technology into the classroom just because, even though that can be kind of a faddish thing. The other thing that I'd like us to do, and maybe do more of here, is to teach technological flexibility. Oftentimes, and I'm sure, I don't know if you feel this way, but I know how to do the things that the devices I have can do, and the programs and apps on those devices that I've chosen. So if Dropbox is where I upload my files to share them, that's the only tool I know how to use. I don't know how to use OneDrive or Google Drive because I've been using Dropbox. And really, in essence, those three tools are essentially the same thing, but oftentimes we don't have the mental flexibility or the flexibility in practice to be able to sort of toggle between them. And so I hope our students learn that flexibility so that when they're asked to use or choose to use new tools, that those things come easily to them, that they have that flexibility to move between programs or devices, and that those things don't, upset the apple cart or stop them in their tracks. We struggle with that, I think, to a degree with our faculty as well, right? We want them to be have that same level of flexibility. And it's hard. I mean, it's, you like what you like and you're used to what you're used to. And when it works, when you've sort of created that schema for yourself, you don't want to veer outside of it. It's uncomfortable, but we're in the uncomfortable business. That's what we do. We try to put kids sort of outside their comfort zone all the time, and so we try to be a school community that feels nimble like that. And I'd say that needs to apply to the way we use technology too.
Right, and as a mom, as a parent of Greenhill, and having heard feedback from the new parents who joined Greenhill is, I think, way ahead in terms of technology skills for the students. And as far as, I think you guys do a great job in that space.
Thank you. I mean, it's a balance, and it's a tough one because we meet and talk with parents all the time who worry about the amount of screen time that kids are having, especially now, right? I mean, in the pandemic, it's just it's a real worry, it's a real concern, and so we want to make sure that we're using technology at the school in ways that make sense and that are value added, and not simply a substitute for something else. And so I want to make sure that, when we're using technology, it's a benefit and it's something that makes sense for us. And it's not simply a crutch or something, a flashy new tool that we're chasing. And it's a like everything else at the school, as you know, from being a parent here, we try to put everything in balance. And sometimes that's tough to do. And the degree to which people agree on what balance feels like oftentimes is hard to reach as well, but we do our best.
Right. Yeah. Me being in this business of teaching CS, I hear all of this from the parents. Yeah.
I'm sure you do.
So it's a fun question. So if you had an extra $5 million of budget to spend on any improvements that you want at Greenhill with no questions asked, how would you spend it and why?
Yeah, this is a absolute fantasy question because this is never going to happen. Although you might have some money to spend, but in terms of no questions asked, that is just not the way it goes down. I would say infrastructure first. I would invest in our infrastructure because I think upgrading that could be the difference between a successful technology program and one that's not successful. And I think, when I hear the challenges that our faculty are having, or sometimes the students are having, it's usually about connectivity, it's about infrastructure, right? And so if we had $5 million, that's the place where I would make the investment. I think our infrastructure is very sound and good, and we look at it constantly to make sure that it's serving our campus well. But I think that'd be a place where we want to put some money. I think the second thing would be staffing, making sure that we have enough people on campus to help the teachers and students, because the technological demands are ever changing. This is something that faculty are just having to get used to. I remember at my old school, I read something and then communicated this to the faculty when we were in the midst of changing platforms, changing the learning management system, that they can anticipate a major platform change every 3 years. And that may have changed. That was a while ago, right? We just shifted to Blackbaud, and I think has been a major upgrade in terms of the tools that are at our faculty and students' disposal. And also I think it gives the parents a really better window into what their students are doing than we had in the past. But it's a whole new thing to learn, and it's challenging, and it requires a lot of support. And we can always provide more support. We have 3 separate educational technologists who are also teaching faculty, but serve in that role for the campus. And they're fantastic. We're lucky to have them. They're amazing. They're brilliant, and they do great work. And I'm sure they would say, if they were on this podcast with us, they need help. They need more help. And I would say probably from the service desk of our IT staff, I imagine they'd say they could use some more person power there as well. Because, we just rolled out, for instance, a one-to-one device, grades 5 through 12. That's a lot of machines. That's a lot of service. That's a lot of maintenance. And so we can always use more people. I would probably not, at least at the outset, invest in additional tools. I don't think that's something that we necessarily need. Of course, I say that having just rolled out a one-to-one program. So I do think we've made some major strides and made some major investments. We've just invested in those iPads for grades pre-K through 3. And so I don't think we have, at least in the short term, needs in terms of those technological tools. There are always things that we can, add to and things that we can use to enhance our teachers' practice, but I don't think those would add up to significant investment at least at this inflection point. I'm sure there will come a time when we'll need to invest more in that, but right now we don't need it. And again, I think I want to always be cautious, prudent about investment in specific tools, especially that apply to the entire campus, right? That require significant investment. Of course, it's nice to fantasize about having $5 million to spend and no questions asked, and what would you do with it? But of course, the reality is that resources are always in competition for other things, and so we want to make sure that we're investing wisely. And I think we've done that so far. I think a lot of times, especially, I think with COVID's a great example. It's not specific to computer science education, but there's a lot of technology that people have added into their campuses because of COVID. And I think in several cases, some of those schools wish they had moved a little more slowly and more thoughtfully about those investments because they've proven to be not that useful and have dated pretty quickly. So that's always going to be our mantra, is to kind of move slowly, cautiously, thoughtfully. And we did that with our 5 through 12 laptop program. That was something I was talking about the day I arrived in 2018, and we've only just now begun to roll that out because we wanted to make sure that it worked for the majority of our families. So that's going to be my approach always. But if you got $5 million, let me know. I'm happy to spread it around.
Yeah, maybe, hopefully one day.
One day.
Yeah. Yeah, but that makes total sense, right? Adoption is important. You can spend and keep on buying new tools, but teachers do not need another tool. They need time. They need support with the existing tools. That makes total sense. Yeah.
At the same time, when teachers come to us we have a very healthy budget to support our teachers. And so when they have ideas, when they have apps or programs or devices that work within our system, but that would enhance the teaching they're doing in their classrooms, like, we can get those things for them, and we will. So I don't want to give a sense that we're not interested in doing that, because we absolutely are. But in terms of like a systemic program-wide change, we'll continue to move slowly in that way.
Yep. Yeah. And especially with pandemic, like, suddenly everyone had to become a technology specialist in addition to whatever they're teaching.
And it's so funny to me too, how quickly new modes of technology have become just standard. I think you wouldn't think twice about being on 6 Zooms a day now. And frankly, how seamlessly, for the most part, that technology works. But gosh, 8 months ago, that'd be a foreign concept. I wonder about, and again, this is sort of outside the realm of our conversation, but I do think it applies. I wonder about how many of these things will stick, even after, hopefully, we're on the other side of this particular crisis, and whether or not, how much of this will hang on to, the technological crutches that we're using to sort of patch together the workday.
Yeah, me too. I'm sure it's not going to go back to where we were, but yeah.
Probably not.
Okay, so what is the final message that you want to send to our community in general, and especially Greenhill community?
I think computer science education, like so many other aspects of the Greenhill education, it's essential. We're really focused on developing interesting, thoughtful, creative problem solvers who are going to go out in the world and do interesting and creative things. And this is a key component of it. And as I said in the beginning of our discussion, it can't start too early. At the same time, we want to do it prudently and wisely. We worry about the same things our parents worry about in terms of screen time, exposure to things that through technology, that when we were kids, we couldn't have gotten our hands on if we wanted to, if we had known about. We concern ourselves with those same things. So as always, as with everything else at the school, it's always going to exist in a balance, and we're going to try to strike that balance as much as we possibly can. And when it gets out of balance, we'll course correct as best we can. But it's an essential part of who we are. And I think for Greenhill, it's also a growth enterprise. I think there's a lot of appetite for it at the school. We're seeing an expansion of our offerings in the upper school. We're seeing more kids want to take tech courses. And so we're going to respond accordingly. And we know that, in terms of their preparedness for the world of work and the world beyond Greenhill and college, they're going to need to have those skills and to be exposed to those things. And so we're going to play a role there.
Yep. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Hark, today. It was very interesting for me. I have learned a few new things about you and the school as well. Thanks.
I'm glad. It was wonderful to be on your program. Thank you.